Hi, I'm Paul Dayton. Go to my website, pauldayton.us. I'm here to talk to you about my second book, Socialism, The Gift That Keeps on Taking. You can go to my website and see free excerpts from this book, as well as my first book, Correcting Our Financial Miseducation. You see my interviews with places around the country and learn more cool stuff there. pauldayton.us. So today, we're going to talk to you a little bit about part one, which is called Populist Redistributive Movements, the Autoimmune Disease of Political Strategies. This is a section which, an autoimmune disease is something that attacks what is beneficial as though it were harmful. And what's worse than that, what these movements do is they defend what is harmful as though it was helpful. This is in real life with real people and real money. I leave all views or ideologies out of the picture, and we just consult the evidence and permit the evidence to dictate the conclusions. I'm going to read a couple pages from this to you, and that'll be the video. So it begins with a quote from during the late 1980s in the Soviet Union. You know, people will often complain. They say, well, these redistributive central planning schemes, whether they're called socialism, communism, wokernism, New Dealerism, whatever you want to call it, Jacobinism, it's all the same. Anything that concentrates power into the hands of the few by decree in the name of liberating the masses. Anything that fits those criteria. They say, well, they didn't have enough money, they didn't have enough resources, they didn't have enough time. The Soviet Union, they had control of all the money for half a century. And what you have is a situation in the late 1980s in which the mayor of one town called Magnitogorsk says, what we must go through to get back tiny handfuls of our own money. And that's the quote to begin this chapter. I begin. The trustbusters, New Dealers, Bolsheviks, Maoists, Jacobins, and others have each actively sought, attacked, and often destroyed productive and life-giving parties or practices existing within a country, producers, entrepreneurs, hard workers, and aggressive savers, while promoting and perpetuating self-defeating and life-devouring practices, the demonization and suppression of successful people, thereby reducing or eliminating altogether the fruits of their success, such as food, clothing, housing, and building materials, technological developments, or medical advances. Also, since the populace are forbidden advancement and success, the emergence of achievers from all levels of wealth and age ceases. Like an autoimmune disease in humans, these populist types of movements impair and destroy prosperity, attacking the good elements as though they were bad, diminishing the whole of the nation while hurting most those who are least moneyed, all under the guise of helping the little guy. What's worse, these nefarious activities compounded by, additionally, defending elements that are tangibly harmful as though they were factually beneficial to the masses. Money stolen from those who have produced it, through investment, labor, or both, is indeed redistributed to someone who did not produce it. However, a great deal of it is redistributed to government bureaucrats, as opposed to the numbskulls who voted for or supported the concentration of power into the hands of the few by decree known as socialism. Each of these latter two parties can lay an equal claim upon the stolen money, as each is 0% responsible for the productive behavior which produced said money, so that neither of these two had been wronged prior to this theft via taxation, and therefore cannot be wronged in the divvying up of the stolen booty. It seems prudent to point out the plain fact that the rubes who drew upon their own tremendous wealth of ignorance as to the historical consequences of the false promises of self-anointed Robin Hoods, that the money stolen will not be handed to them, at least not very much of it. And neither will the goods and services which are not produced by the people who used to make money producing them end up in the hands of the vapid wokers of any given nation. Take, for an example, John D. Rockefeller and his Standard Oil Company. Rockefeller had many partners and stakeholders, ranging from those holding significant chunks of stock to those regular folk who might buy a few shares with some of their savings, as opposed to other uses. Though Rockefeller was always in a position of prominence and control, the Standard thrived throughout the second half of the 19th century. Rockefeller was joined in his entry into the business by dozens upon dozens of others who bought oil claims, who endeavored in refining, who sought fortune and an easier life for themselves than would be possible necessary for survival. Most lost their shirts in their ventures. Some made decent livings, fewer struck it rich, but nobody equaled the zenith of success achieved by John D. Rockefeller. At his peak, the Standard briefly controlled 90% of the world's supply of oil during during the 1880s, until new oil was discovered in Russia, as nature quashed his temporarily monopolistic position in oil, several decades prior to being tried by the trustbusters, by the way. His greatest level of wealth has been estimated in US dollars at $815 million in 1911, and that's in 1911 dollars, not adjusted for inflation to today's value. An incredible, tremendous fortune. Standard Oil brought improved, excuse me, Standard Oil brought improved heating and lighting of homes and businesses for an ever increasing proportion of Americans, and this due to the company's own innovations as they sought greater profits. Oil and gas were reduced in price for the consumer as their quality improved. No government energy program could hold a candle to the results obtained by the Standard in terms of increasing access, reducing price, improving quality, increasing supply, and doing it all in a self-sustaining fashion without any coercion or use of force to achieve these outcomes. Government efforts, we know from the pages of this text, rely solely upon coercion and force while achieving few, if any, of the positive outcomes mentioned in the previous sentence. And yet, a group of politicians teamed up to manufacture a crisis of alleged exploitative capitalist monopolists. This was done to drum up populist fervor, attack the private property rights of a targeted extreme minority group, and to transform this act of thuggery, which also directly attacked a key energy and product manufacturer as well as distributor, into an act of politically profitable nobility. This group was called the Trustbusters. This is a case of the autoimmune disease in practice, attacking the productive citizens, as well as the mechanism for producing and innovating necessities, as though they were bad. To eliminate public charities such as socialized medicine, food stamps, cash prizes for failure to be productive, and or for persistently irresponsible behavior, from which the person is paid to fail to become responsible because becoming responsible will revoke the payment, housing vouchers, or anything else, does not make it illegal to give to private charity, or to lend money to the state for use in its purposes through purchase of government bonds. It does, however, cease the forcing of people to have their money turned over to sham charities run by government bureaucrats. With their staggering and often accelerating costs, commingled with the diminishing returns which pale to those returned by freed citizens over extended periods, these types of government agencies are simply commerce hubs for the professional political class, masquerading as charities to benefit the public well-being. It is easy to subscribe to this bizarre religion, which advocates methods proven undeniably to reduce the availability of goods and services when one is not among the beggars, and it is certainly not an unjust outcome for this same person to be the one who is left without the resources eliminated by the methods that they themselves advocated, knowing full well that the outcome will be to make less for everybody. It is worth noting that the press in the United States had been earning a reputation of low esteem among thinking men for quite some time. Tocqueville wrote of the press after his visit during 1831-32, quote, "So, generally, journalists in the United States have a lowly status. Their education is rudimentary, and the expression of their ideas is frequently coarse." End quote. He went on to say, quote, "The spirit of the journalist in America consists in a crude, unvarnished, and unsubtle attack on the passions of his readers. He leaves principles aside to seize hold of men, whom he pursues into their private lives, exposing their weaknesses and defects." The foreigner continued by writing that, quote, "Above all, The result is that the personal opinions of journalists carry virtually no weight in the reader's eyes when the latter look for in newspapers as knowledge of facts. Only by altering or distorting these facts can a journalist gain some influence for his views. He concluded that, taken as a whole, quote, the periodical press, nonetheless, is the most powerful of social forces, end quote. Many today have a decided lack of respect for much of the popular press. Well, one important difference, 2 centuries later, is the noted absence of facts and evidence contained in the works of the press when it comes to major issues. While another, perhaps more important factor, is that today nobody seems to notice that they are consuming intellectual empty calories, and the people resist a limitation of the discussion of the language to evidence. The next portion of this will be called disguising friends as foes, trust busting, and other assaults on the providers of the necessities of life. There are those who, in the victim politics industry, looking to push populist, redistributive causes, who for centuries have attempted to put a negative mark on people who profit from the necessaries of life: food, water, shelter, medicine, and healthcare, simply because they profit. And frankly, it's simply to arise the envy of people who don't think, or people who are just thieves, who just look for a reason to steal from somebody. The fact is that the more profitability, legitimate profit, not through a government-enabled monopoly. And always remember, which is covered in this book, no monopoly has ever existed which has not been created and sustained by government. Usually in the name of eliminating monopoly, by the way. No private monopoly has ever existed or sustained. But you have people who say that, the people who demonize profitability, any product, including food, including shelter and so forth, profit is what keeps products coming, including stuff that you don't need, like, I don't know, gold purses and $5,000 garments and things like that, luxuries. Profitability is the key to keeping supply going, to making supply available and improving quality. So that when you take the profit potential out of, or at least sap much of it from, say, housing, for example, through rent control laws, through no-build laws, and things like that, or even through the courts, through a more subtle way, which makes it difficult to evict tenants who don't. A tenant who doesn't pay is just a thief, right? Somebody walks into a store, a convenience store, a supermarket, they walk in as a customer. But if you're just going to take a bunch of stuff and not put any money in the register, you transfer from customer to thief. In the same way, when you have either it's a commercial tenant or a residential tenant who's not paying for use of the space, now they're a thief. The way to keep housing prices down and to make keep housing availability up and improve housing quality is to get those people out right away, is to cut the bleeding from people who are just stealing. What you do in areas, say for example Buffalo, New York, with New York City, where it's very difficult for people to get thieves out of their properties in the name of helping the renters as a class. Well, what you have are a lot of abandoned buildings, right? It's not worth the money to buy the building. It's not worth the money to make it habitable, even if you already own the building, right? Why would I spend money to put somebody in there when the state is going to confiscate my property, right? Violating the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which states that the state shall not take the citizen's property without just compensation for the state's own uses. The state is then taking from the citizen, the private citizen, their property, using it as a way to try to buy votes from the renter, well, it used to be a renter, who is just a thief, in the name of helping the renter as a whole, the tenant class as a whole, which it lowers the total availability of housing, therefore driving up the price because of scarcity, but also either they're going to pay for it, the renter is going to pay for it as a class through decreased quality, that is, they can't put money into making the places nicer or fixing things that are broken, or they're going to pay a higher price for what than they would have paid otherwise for habitable fixed things that are fixed in a working condition. So anyway, all those things I've discussed more specifically and with precise detail all over the world for 4,000 years. I encourage you to check out Socialism, the Gift That Keeps On Taking. I encourage you to go to my website, pauldayton.us, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining.